Hey, it's Juck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth. We're Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. It is showtime. Thank you so much for joining us here at Buckeye Huddle Prime Time. We appreciate you for coming in every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. We are here live. Emily, thank you so much. A new member in Dead Air Sports has a proposed name change. Goat Talk with Juck and Tony. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't include myself in that, but Tony definitely is, and he will be here with us as every Monday so far this season. It's been a victory Monday, of course, as the Buckeyes now 4-0, sitting at number one in the country, the number one odds to win the national championship in the country. And to me, a very different feeling Buckeye team than we had last year at this time. And it should feel different. Obviously, you've got a new offensive coordinator. You've got a new defensive coordinator. And we expected the defense. Well, some of us expected the defense to look very similar to last year's defense. I didn't. I thought it looked quite a bit different about the middle of the spring when we started seeing how everybody was reacting to Patricia. I thought we were going to see him really catch on with everybody and start to introduce some new things, and the way they were going to be received was going to be very well because of the relationship, and we would see quite a few differences. I didn't expect this. This looks so much different than it did last year. It's so much more exciting. It's so much more fun. But we also have a new offensive coordinator, and the offense, right, from a game plan perspective, looking not so much fun, much more conservative. Are we going to see this conservative game plan continue, right? Because we've seen it in the first two games now, this ultra conservative, run the ball a lot game plan. I'm wondering if that is something that's going to be coming back up every time we play a big game. It's a suffocating defense, no doubt. A suffocating defense, and many teams with a suffocating defense rely on that and just play offense and score a little bit and rely on that defense. I feel like the Buckeyes can do both, and I'd sure love to see it. But Ryan Day has evolved as a coach. He's in his 7th year. This is a guy who said something the other day that just kind of took me back. Like, it was not something I would have ever imagined him saying. Like, we don't need to score on every possession. Like, normally that guy has always been like, we're going to score, we're going to score, we're going to score. He's like, when you got a defense like that, you don't need to. And it just, man, he's just evolving, right? It's a different coach. And that happens. That happens. Right now, I think he's running the best program in college football. Most people would disagree with me. Most people would say Georgia. I think it's definitely a conversation between Georgia and Ohio State. Georgia doesn't look good. Georgia 2025 does not look too good. They just lost to Alabama again. They don't have a sack on the year. This isn't a defense that's a normal Georgia defense like we remember in their dominant runs and their national championship season at 21 and 22. What does Ohio State have to do now that they've won the national championship in 24? What do they got to do in 2025 to kind of take over that title, for more people to swing my way that Ohio State is, in fact, the current top program in all of college football? Do they have to win a national championship? I think they can just get to the national championship. Get to the national championship, and they take over the mantle. I got a couple more questions, and I want to ask them with Tony here. Is there another option for Ohio State on the defensive line next to Kaden McDonald? One that we have not seen next to Kaden McDonald. Obviously, Edric Houston has lost his starting spot for the time being. He did not start against Grambling. He didn't start against Ohio. He didn't start against Washington. Ty Malone's been in there starting. And the plays against Washington, I think he had 11 snaps. Obviously had the big penalty. Didn't play good. Is there another option? I think there might be. And I'm curious to get Tony's thoughts on this, as Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Huddle will join us here on Buckeye Huddle Primetime, where he belongs. But we're going to discuss that, recap quite a bit of Tony's experience from the big game, as obviously him and Tom went out to the game, bringing you the best coverage on the internet over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And I want to know what Tony has to think about that game, and specifically versus Oregon as well, right? He went to Oregon, he went to Washington. These two are rivals. I would love to know from a Buckeyes perspective, with no dog in the fight, who did it better. But I'd appreciate it all if you guys could like the show today. And if we could subscribe to the channel, that'd be great. We hit our goal of 30,000, but we're trying to get to 34,000 by the end of the year. I don't know if that's the stated goal. I just made that up, but we would really appreciate it if you could do that for us. But let's bring on our buddy, my buddy, your buddy, Tony Gurman, to join us and get his recap of the fantastic trip out to Washington that resulted in a big Buckeyes victory and a 4-0 start. Tony Gurman, welcome to Buckeye Huddle Primetime, buddy.
Jack, thank you for having me. It's been a while since
It
I've
has.
been on. You've kept me away. And even before you texted me today, I was going to text you like, hey, could I come on? And you made me feel good by me not having to do that. So thank you.
Fantastic, Tony. Well, I'm glad that you're excited to be here because I want to know all about your trip. I want to know about the fans because I was surprised. They didn't show us much on TV of the stands, but the few times they did flash, there was a lot more scarlet in those stands than I was expecting. That is a long trip. Obviously, Ohio State folks are everywhere, but my gosh, it looked to me from the TV. I can't trust the photos. I'm seeing dueling photos come out on Twitter. Some people are saying they're altered. I don't know. But overall, what did you think of the Ohio State fan presence?
It was impressive. And we got an idea that it would be on Friday when we went out to lunch to meet a couple of friends at a brewery type place down in the market area. And every, 20 minutes, somebody would yell out OH and the entire place would yell IO. And there's also, there are also Mariners fans there because there was a Mariners game getting ready that night, but Ohio State took it over. And it was, you could see it, a bunch of scarlet, obviously walking around that whole area. I don't know if it's normally that busy on a Friday afternoon. I assume it's not because this place was packed and the whole area was packed. And then you're watching it, and I'm taking pictures with my phone on Saturday as it looked like 50-50 in terms of people coming into the stadium,
Right.
like, but Washington fans know how late to wait to get into the stadium. So, but the student section was off to the west, and that was, already getting filled within that first hour, but it just looked like 50-50 coming in for a long period of time. It wasn't 50-50 in the stands. I didn't even get a chance to ask Tim May before he told me. I think it was about 15,000. I'm like, well, I was thinking 10. So say 10 to 15,000. But
And 70,000 is the
70.
Okay.
And it still feels kind of low based on you saw the pockets and you saw Ohio State fans everywhere. And as I was told by the OSU folks, the Ohio State tickets were up in the nosebleeds. So anything outside of the nosebleeds, that's all secondary market where Ohio State fans coming in, and they were everywhere, and they were paying good money to see this game, and they were heard.
Yeah. You could hear them through the telecast. So comparing that last year to the Oregon game and comparing those two venues too, that, I've always heard all my life how great those two venues are. They're obviously rivals. The stadiums both have a bit of the benefit of construction for the noise, and that's for sure. But they do love to brag about it, despite that massive architectural benefit. But when we talk about those two experiences, and obviously Oregon, it turned tonight during the game, so maybe a little bit of an added bonus there. How do you compare those two venues?
Well, it's venues and surrounding area and people. Both were great. In terms of the noise, I've never been anywhere like Oregon where it was just constant noise. Now, that game was also fantastic, and Oregon was in it the entire time. This game was a little bit different, and there were more Ohio State fans here than there were in Eugene. But this was also loud. But you saw which team was having issues with the noise, and it wasn't Ohio State. It was the Washington offensive line that was having the issues with the false starts and things like that. But I don't know that anything will ever top the Oregon game. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is Oregon and Washington have open press boxes. That means most press boxes you go to will have windows, and sometimes they'll open windows, sometimes it won't. By the time you get to like the middle of October, they're not going to open them up anymore. So these are all just, they roll up the garage door windows and you're out in the open. And so it's always going to sound louder when you're to somebody up in a press box. So like,
Right.
I've not necessarily experienced any kind of open air press box at Penn State for a whiteout. I've been to several whiteouts and they're very loud. But man, the Oregon thing, I just keep telling people, it's just constant noise and there's always something going on. And as you know, and we've talked about this, I think Ohio State took a lot of what they saw at Oregon, that whole game day atmosphere, and wanted to implement that in Ohio Stadium. And that's why you're seeing some of the things that they've done.
And I think it's helped. Now, the Ohio game, a MAC team comes in. It was a night game. Curious to see how this Minnesota game is going to review, though I did just see the line drop. It's over 21.5 points. Minnesota not doing their job to give us a good case study here. Also saw that you tweeted earlier, PJ Fleck talking about Jeremiah Smith, and wow, number one, what a suit he had on with the button down here to the down the chest. But man, I don't know that I've ever heard a coach so complimentary and succinct about a player in college football. That was pretty cool to see. But I do want to talk. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna. You've got to go back to like the past like number one draft pick aliens, where coaches are just like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
we're just human. They are not.
Exactly. Big Ten play. That was the start of it, right? And to me, the location of this game, the buildup of it all. It was 2 weeks. We had a bye week. Obviously, we talked a ton about this game. I've loved Big Ten expansion. I think the benefits of it far outweigh the drawbacks. I think it's added so much more excitement to the regular season. It's kind of like night and day if we can just go back to 2023 and think of our thoughts coming into that season. We got another 3-game season. We got Notre Dame, we got Penn State in the game, and whoever wins that round robin between Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. And now we look at this conference. It is just a totally different league, so much more exciting. I'm not used to it yet. That game to me felt like part of the out of conference. And now I feel like it's time for Big Ten play. Still trying to wrap my head around it. Is it feeling more normal to you yet?
Are you excited for the Big Ten opener against Minnesota? Is that what you're saying? To me, it does feel like Big Ten football because these people were serious, but also serious about the tailgating. And it was a 12:30 kick. I didn't hear anybody complaining about having to do this. Now they haven't had to do it 8 weeks in a row or whatever. So, come talk to me in a few weeks when they've had to just continue to do the same thing over and over again. But I think the fact that you have most of these schools that have all of these schools, frankly, that have been out West have been playing Big Ten teams forever. So there's a familiarity to it, whether it's national championship games, whether it's, the Rose Bowl or just random games here or there. So there's familiarity, and Big Ten fans know the Pac-12 teams, especially the ones that came over. And so when you go out to Oregon, you go out to Washington, it feels like Big Ten football, and it's quality football. So I never felt like it's not like when you go to Maryland or Rutgers and you have to tell yourself this is Big Ten football and this is
right.
Like it's almost I don't know, say it's a punishment. It's a long drive. We're drivers, and I'm not here to complain. I could complain about my day at the airport and on planes yesterday, but that's part of the thing. And it's coast to coast now, but the West Coast feels more Big Ten to me than Maryland and Rutgers. And maybe that would be different if they were better.
Right. That could help too. If they had a little more energy going on, if they were better. I wanted to pull this up because I actually heard this as well. TK says the Washington people were saying they don't like night games. They love this 12:30 kickoff. This is what I heard too. Did you hear any of that when you were out there? Like this is their thing?
No, I didn't, but we didn't get a chance to talk to too many Washington folks, but it doesn't surprise me when the rest of the world is living, or the rest of the country lives kind of on East Coast to some degree,
right?
That out West, you start your day earlier anyway, because we're kind of operating on East Coast time in some semblance, in some ways for everybody. And so it doesn't surprise me, but for something like this, you're not going to get a night game anyway. So you're not even necessarily thinking about it. So it's going to be a day game one way or the other. But at least now you get the game over with. You can get back out on the water, I guess.
Yeah. So like I said, we had 2 weeks to break this thing down, and obviously a formidable opponent Washington was. My tune changed on this game and the way I was thinking about this game last Tuesday listening to Ryan Day, and it just struck me the way he was talking as so familiar to the way he was talking, for instance, about the Oregon game, or the way he talks about what he would refer to as a matchup game. The emphasis that he was putting on it, like the no stone left unturned, the game plan, the preparation, the focus, the attention, the way all the players are going to be absolutely ready. And with a team that has some talent on the come up for sure, and a couple really, really good players like Washington, still nowhere near the caliber of 2023 Oregon. And despite Damon Williams and Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston, I don't know how many of their starting 22 outside of those three could potentially start on this Ohio State roster. And when we look at regular season Ohio State upsets, generally the element of overlooking the opponent is involved in there. Obviously, Day's been fantastic with this his entire career, but it just certainly felt like it was not going to happen this week. Did you get the same feeling from him that he was approaching this kind of like a matchup game, or like he did Oregon?
Well, I don't know if I heard you say it or saw you write it, or read you write it, that Ryan Day was treating this like a matchup game, but it's not a matchup game. And so that means Washington's in trouble. And I agreed with that because, yeah, when you watch Washington on offense, you see 3 guys, and Jonah Coleman, Denzel Boston, and Damon Williams. When you watch the defense, I mean, they have 6'4" corners because that's rare. And then that's, they had a linebacker who was hurt. And so nobody really just jumps out, because when we do these matchup games, Tom and I will go out, and I'm sure you're the same way. You go watch their games and you see who stands out. So you start to get a feel for it. And I don't know that I wrote any of the defensive linemen down, other than maybe a defensive end. Like there's not a lot going on there. So if nobody's jumping out at you, like I remember watching Tennessee, and corners and defensive ends were jumping out, and you're like, okay, this guy, make sure, good and bad, they were jumping out. And I hear against the Washington State, some bad happened, and you see that, and you're like, boy, that secondary sure looks like a concern. And did they take advantage of it? Well, we can discuss that as well. But yeah, they just didn't have enough. When we talked about this, Tom and I were talking about it. Probably like a preview show. What Washington was going to need was to steal a possession, which they did. You get the crowd, have the crowd in there, have that cause issues, which I don't think it did. And you're going to need some luck. And they didn't really get any luck. They stole a possession, but they had really not much luck in that game.
That's for sure. The first half, I want to say, like, I jog my brain as much as I can. You're a big stats guy. I know you always got great stats, and you're excellent with the research of those stats. I'm not. I'm really sloppy with it. But I couldn't recall in my memory a 3 offensive possession first half. Obviously, there was a contributing factor with the punt return that got fumbled. But I was live streaming the game, and it was, I want to say, 4 minutes left. And we were getting the ball, and it was like, guys, is this the third possession? I must have missed something. I'm trying to take notes, but also talk to the chat. Surely I missed something. I didn't miss anything. That has to be some kind of record. Can you recall it?
Well, and I wanted to ask Ryan Day about that afterwards, and Julian Sayin didn't get a chance to, but yeah, I never remember anything like that. In 2017 against Army, they had 4. 2021 against Minnesota, they had 4. And that 2021 Minnesota game was also that game went 2 hours and 55 minutes, just like this one. That's the quickest game of in years. And it's crazy, even though they had 5 against Texas and 1 was a kneel down, so they only had truly 4 possessions in that one in the first half. But when you go back to the 2018 season, to tell you how much the game has changed with the clock rules, and now Ryan Day wanting to slow play things for 16 games. They had 7 possessions in the entire game, right? In this game. That's what they averaged in the first half back in 2018, 7 possessions.
That's just blows my mind, man.
So you're talking, like, I'm just looking here. They had in 2018 in the first half, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 9 games where they had at least 7 possessions in the first half in 2018. And yes, they were moving quickly and the first down rules were different, but the game has changed. And Ryan Day is slowing things down and making every play more important. But if you're going to do that, you can't have the 2021 defense. You've got to have the 2024 defense and 2025 defense, we assume.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. How did you feel at that point, down 3-0, with them taking the ball back at that point, the way things had gone? How were you feeling? What was your vibe? Was this like, this is nothing like I expected?
Well, I think one of my tweets was I would throw on first down, I would throw on second down, I would throw on third down, because it just seemed like they were very, very conservative. But also when you look at it, they went down the field, didn't pick up the fourth down. They drove another, they had a touchdown drive and they had one drive that failed. So it's like 2 of their 3 drives were successful in moving the ball. And eventually, as long as you're moving it, you're eventually going to score. That's the thought. And how many points do you need to score in this one? Probably not a lot, the way the defense is playing. To me, it just felt like they just needed the ball, needed to throw it a little bit more. Things would open up. And I think that's what happened. And one last thing on the possessions, because I remember talking to Ryan Day about this in 2023, when the first down rules went into effect. They had 9 possessions against Indiana. And that was like,
he was flipping out.
He was flipping out. And I asked him about it. It's like, how, what are you going to do? I don't know. We're going to have to figure out, we're going to have to evaluate how we're doing things if we're only going to have 9 possessions. And now it's like 9 is maybe your average.
I recall right when you brought that up. I remember he was mad about it. So yeah, like you're coming into a really hostile environment. First road start for Julian. First 2 possessions, run pass ratio, 11 runs, 4 passes, 0 points. But like you said, that first possession, they were moving the ball on the ground. CJ Donaldson had like an 11-yarder and a 12-yarder. Lanes were opening up humongous. And I was thinking at that point, like, wow, we're going to run the ball all over these guys. He said, or you said in an article on BuckeyeHuddle.com today, if death by 1,000 cuts still leads to a winning performance, is it really necessary for an offense to be more explosive? If you're asking Ohio State head coach Ryan Day, the answer is an emphatic yes, which is music to my ears, because I hate the way that felt. I hate the conservative approach. I understand it, especially in the situation to start off that way. But it felt a whole lot like Texas, which I didn't mind one bit. I was totally on board with that for Texas. It was a one-off. It was his first start. It was a really tough opponent where it was a matchup game all across the board. This was not that, though it was a tough environment. Julian Sayin has been pretty unflappable. But possession 3 and 4, you get to the middle 8, 3 and then 4. And in that section of the game, we saw 15 passes to 8 runs, which yielded 2 touchdowns, leaning on the strength of this offense that isn't looking like the run game right now, Tone. Do you see, if you're looking forward, a change in the way they're kind of calling this, or do you think these are just kind of one-offs and we're going to see more of a balanced approach like we would have thought?
They're going to tell you that it's also opponent based, and Washington, they played a lot of man. So maybe they were looking to take more shots, but then they would drop back and try to eliminate those. But, and seeing our X's and O's guy, Ross Fulton, over at Buckeye Huddle, saying there were 4 or 5 shots that Julian could have taken that he didn't.
He said that?
I think that's what he said. He saw like 4 or 5 opportunities. And you can see there was a couple where he would kind of just drop his shoulder and get ready, and it's like it wasn't there. So I don't have the all 22 like he does, so I don't know which ones where it was. But right now, still, he's still young. He doesn't want to make mistakes, and so you're going to have to battle that, and also understand, recognize quicker that that's a throw that you can make into like the safety's not going to get there, that sort of thing, and
right.
The longer you wait, the easier it is for him to get there. So maybe the recognition sooner, that sort of thing. So when we talk to Ryan Day on Tuesday, that'll be something to ask him about, because gosh, how long was the deep ball a problem last year in terms of it being a topic of conversation? Not because they weren't throwing it much, but they weren't throwing it a ton, but also it wasn't very effective. Here, they're not necessarily throwing it at all. Other than, if, like, you can count the one, on your one hand, basically, some of the deep shots. But like, as you said, he was, whatever he was, 14 or 15 or whatever, at some point in those 2, by taking what the defense was giving him. And it was the short stuff as they were bailing it. Fine, we'll take 8 yards, we'll take 11 yards, and we'll just continue to chop it up, move down the field. But as Randy said, they need to get better at explosives. And that's not just the passing game, that's also the running game. They had no plays over 20 yards, which is you want to talk about how rare is that? There's some research for you. Go find the last time they didn't have a 20-yard play in a game, because I think that happens. I don't think it happens very often.
Right. I was so you brought that up about the deep shots and what Ross had said. I was checking out not too long before we came on. The college football nerds were tweeting about Julian Sayin and being suspect of his deep ball, and they said that the 9-for-9 stat that came from PFF was incorrect as far as targets down 20 yards downfield. I've been repeating that all week, and they promptly pulled up the clip of that beautiful dime that he dropped to Brandon Inniss over his shoulder at Texas, the Brandon drop, which was 25 yards downfield. Okay, that wasn't a completion, but it was right on the money. And then they were trying to take shots at his deep balls as having too much air. Now, that is how Ryan Day is instructing him to throw that ball. And he's talked about that philosophically and why it is that he wants it like that with these special receivers. It is, he thinks it's a higher percentage to get a positive result, whether that be a PI or a reception, throwing the deep ball like that. But I think that he throws a really nice deep ball. What are your opinions on his deep ball?
Well, first off, that throw to Brandon Inniss, that was negated by a defensive penalty anyway, so it didn't happen.
There we go. Okay.
It's not an incompletion. It's just a no play with a 15-yard, gain or whatever. But yeah, I haven't, the one issue was like, boy, that first throw to Carnell Tate had to wait for it and catch it twice, and it was still a touchdown. And others, it's like, well, did Jeremiah Smith have to slow down one step? It's like, as you said, Ryan Day is telling him to let your receiver have a chance to get it. Now, there are times where you could be like, just try to out throw Jeremiah Smith, because I bet you can't. And there's that approach as well. Like the broken play, the broken coverage, he just, zipped it out there on a line. But other than that, yeah, go give your NFL receivers an opportunity to catch it. Like, if it's like when, you need a putt to win, at least get it to the hole. And this is at least give your receivers an opportunity to catch the ball. So, if we're all going to be super critical of everything. And there's always guys that we can look at and just micro analyze. A redshirt freshman quarterback in 4 starts, completing 79% of his passes. And,
right.
His 3 interceptions are all like, tipped passes, or just being greedy against Grambling State. Like, it's, I have no issues with how he's playing right now. Does he need to get better? No, he's a perfect specimen of a quarterback. Like, yeah, certainly be more aggressive downfield. I wanted to see them throw the ball more against Washington. I felt like this could have been a game where they had 400 yards passing.
So did I.
But that was if Washington cooperated.
Right. I thought Washington would be scoring a lot, and that it would be necessary to keep it rolling like that. And it would be a game with 11 offensive possessions potentially. Like, I really, and we'll get into the defense in a bit, but I thought Washington was going to be able to do some damage. And I was already mentally like, I'm okay with it because Ohio State can hang with it. But as far as Julian goes, all things considered, this was a fantastic game, I thought. The first game that he actually got some pressure and he made no bad decisions. We even saw the potential of a bad decision, the play that he lined it to Carnell Tate and he made the tiptoe catch. Like, he was looking right at first and he was going to throw and he pulled it back in, rolled the other way, and he hit Carnell. I didn't think there was any way, and I don't know if this was just the way the game felt to me, that he was going to end up with hitting his average of 80%. And he was right there, like 79 point something. And that 16-yard scramble, almost picking up that first down, was tremendous. And we have seen him now in 50% of his games, incredibly high pressure situations, one at home, one away. The guy just looks unflappable, ice in his veins. And this game, Tone, he looked like he was having fun. I don't know if you saw it yet on the TV copy, but he was smiling and laughing early in the game. Like, he was having fun. I think he's getting more settled in, and I'm super, super pleased with him.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, if you're old enough to remember this. around this time, a little bit earlier than this, back in 2021, when CJ Stroud was a redshirt freshman starting quarterback, fans were already calling for his job and wanting Kyle McCord in there because he was young and making some mistakes, or his receivers weren't doing what they needed, so he got the blame for it. And I'm not seeing any of that with Julian Sayin. Like, everybody loves him, which is just about as crazy as it can get for a college football starting quarterback when, you have thrown 3 interceptions this season. And yet, people like, is there anybody clamoring for Lincoln Keenholz at this point, or Tavian St. Clair? Like, I think is this the happiest Ohio State fans have ever been with a quarterback after 4 games? A new quarterback.
That's a great point, Tony.
Justin Fields did very well as well, but and there was nobody behind him to clamor for.
Right.
But like, everybody's the only people who aren't happy with Julian Sayin, maybe college football nerds, but they'll also just tell you, like, we're only looking at data here. This is not an emotional thing. This is just data.
No, that it really is an excellent point. I hadn't even thought about it, but yeah, normally this time of the year, this is, early on, we see a couple struggles and it's immediately like, did they make the wrong decision? Let's see that guy in particular. When you're talking about a guy that is a favorite, right? Everybody loves Lincoln. And then a 5-star hometown boy that everybody can't wait to see in the future. Like, this would be the time. And people doubt Julian because of his size. Like, it all lines up for that to be like a huge talking point right now. And nothing, not a word. So yeah, everybody's happy, it seems. Damon Williams on the other end. When Washington started off with the ball to start the game, I thought it was a really important series. That was the strength on strength matchup, the strength of both teams. And we talked about it all week. How would the Buckeyes defense handle this dynamic offense? And my thought, Damon would have a serious adjustment running the ball, because he's not used to this caliber of athlete. He's not used to an Arvell Reese closing a gap like that. And we kind of saw a similar thing with, I'm not comparing these athletes, but with Parker Navarro, when Arvell closed the gap on him so fast, like, he just wasn't expecting it. There's a getting used to you gotta have there when you're not used to facing guys like that. I thought he'd get settled in, and right off the rip, when we saw how the defensive line was playing him, it just looked like this is going to work. They're going to be able to contain this guy. Caden McDonald just stacking his man out in front of him, and they couldn't block him one-on-one. They kept trying. I don't know why, but right there, I thought it was a really important possession, because I was prepared to be pulling my hair out with this guy picking up third downs with his legs, maybe ripping off a 25 or a 30-yarder here or there. I thought there'd probably be several. Shutting him down in the run game, I didn't think was on the table at all. I just wanted to slow him down. And the fact, if you'd have told me before, like, he's going to have negative rushing yards on the day, I'd have said you're crazy and we win by 50. That, to me, one of the more impressive things we'll see all year is the fact that guy did not have a rushing yard.
Yeah, held 101 yards below his season average, which is pretty good if he can do that. And when you watched his earlier games, he would kind of struggle against the inside blitz and stuff right in his face. He has an issue with, because he's fortunate to be about 5'10" or so, and it's just a lot to ask of him. But then you watch the way the Buckeyes handled him, and I'm writing about it. I'll eventually get it done. Juck, I haven't done anything today. It's just been vegging after getting back from the West Coast. But
long trip, man.
It is. But one of the defensive linemen said, "Yeah, we're just caging," and then Coach Jay said he'll come to us, and that's what happened. Like, if as long as you're waiting, and the coverage on some of these, like, this is one of those games where it may not seem that exciting to go and rewatch the defense every single snap, because you're going to see something every single time, whether it's one of the few busted coverages that makes you angry. I promise you, there are more plays where everybody is locked up and Damon Williams is just like, what the hell do I do now? And it's like, well, I guess I could try to run. And, you see him bust out of the gate, and Arvell Reese not only like tracks him down, but makes Damon Williams try to cut back, because he knows he can't beat him to the corner. It's like, yeah, that's insane when you're talking about he can't against a 6'4", 240-pound guy. Yeah. And I think there's even one where they had Davis Nigbinosin kind of spying. Like, there was no cornerback on his side, so he was just up on towards the line, and he was the guy that came in and cleaned up on the Caden McDonald get back here sack on third down or whatever, or fourth down. it was really impressive to watch. And I know we just talked about this is a 3-man offensive team, but that was an 11-man defense, and they locked every bit of it up.
It was so fun. It was so fun to watch. Offensively, the offensive line, that first possession, you had, man, they were blowing lanes wide open. Didn't end up staying like that. The running game, I thought, was going to be a little bit better at that point. And as a whole, the backs averaged a little less than 4.5 yards a carry. Somewhat leaky pass protection at times, which surprised me, though this defensive line with 4-man pressure, I guess, did have really good stats, but it's hard for me to factor in how much that means playing Colorado State, Wazoo, and an FCS. But they did a pretty good job on the Buckeyes offensive line. We did have dual offensive player of the game, 2 offensive linemen in Luke and Carson Hinsman, which surprised me. But again, I haven't rewatched it yet. Keying in on those offensive linemen. Tegra had another he always seems to have like 2 or 3 bad plays in one series, so it really stands out. Phil Daniels had the penalties. What are your thoughts about the offensive line, at the performance in the game against Washington, and then maybe now 4 games into the year as a whole? I feel maybe like I thought I would be feeling a little better about them at this point.
Well, I think you probably need to realize Philip Daniels is going to get some sort of a 15-yard penalty every 3 games, whether it's a personal foul or hands to the face, which is a personal foul, but just something of that nature. But then he needs to get out of it. Like, he can't let that compound. But overall, I think the left side is doing very well, include Carson Hinsman in there. I've been really impressed with Carson Hinsman all season long. To be able to do everything that he did in this one was good. I'm with you though. Like, how much of the lack of the running game do we put on the offensive line, or do we put on the fact that they're still trying to figure out how they're going to operate in the running game? And I think part of the issue is they knew Bo Jackson was going to play this year. Ryan Day even said it. He just said probably not in that first one. They knew he'd have a larger role. I don't know that they thought he'd have to have this large of a role this early to have 17 carries, which was the season high for any running back last year. Quinshon Judkins did that. Travion Henderson's season high last year was 12. So Bo Jackson's already, blown by that. Yeah. And so is CJ Donaldson. So I think if you look at it, the long carry was 16 yards and they still averaged, 4 yards a carry. So they were consistent but not great and not very good. Like it was good enough, but at some point, good enough stops being good enough against better defenses. And right, if Washington is considered a better defense, then this offense the running game needs to get a whole lot better. And I wonder if that also means, Ohio State needs to throw the ball downfield more to back the defense up a little and be more successful with that, be more prone to doing that. And if they just need to play more 11 personnel, because the more 12 personnel you're playing, the closer everybody's going to get. And I saw it's Brian Hartline is in love with the 12 personnel right now. And you wonder, is that because they feel that's what they need to get the running game going? And I know a lot of offensive coaches love the 12 because you can throw out of it, you can run out of it, you can trap a defense, that sort of thing. It's like, well, you can trap a defense if you don't huddle, but you huddle.
Exactly.
There's no trapping anymore.
I want to say, Tony, I think I counted it up. I forget. I want to say it's roughly like out of the 62 offensive snaps, there were something like 120 snaps by tight ends. Like, that's a lot of snaps by tight ends, man, in this game. And we know that the 12 and 13 personnel way up. It feels, I don't know, man, there's a lot of things that just feel like they're still trying to figure things out here. But I do think that we saw a pretty defined role kind of situation for these backs where Bo was definitely kind of like the guy with 17 carries, 30 snaps. CJ and Peoples combined had 35. Bo with the best yards per carry, best yards after contact, which is good and what was expected. Donaldson had 2 carries and kind of feels like, all right, he's that RB2, really great in pass pro, got the soft hands, so it lines up perfectly for him there. Peoples just had 3 carries, but he did have 3 receptions in addition to that. So maybe they're trying to work him in that way. I'm wondering, is this kind of what we can expect moving forward? Or was that just because it was a tough opponent and maybe you gave Bo a bigger workload and you're going to kind of flatten it out back a little more towards even when you play a Minnesota, get Peoples a little more involved and save the wear and tear off of Bo?
Yeah, these games, the matchup games, the road games where you're concerned, where the coach is concerned, they're always lie detector tests, and it tells you exactly what they believe and what they feel they need to do to win. And then against Minnesota, they can lie a little bit and get things back to even, but also with a purpose. Like when we lie, we all lie with a purpose. But now you can keep guys restful, and you don't want a true freshman Bo Jackson who has a history of injuries in high school. You don't need to give him 17 carries against Minnesota. You may need to at Illinois. You may need to down the road. So I would expect it to go back to 35 carries split relatively evenly between 3 guys on Saturday, and maybe even throw a couple of carries in there for Isaiah West if the game is comfortable.
Tony, listen, I'm like you're preaching to the choir, man. I'm telling you, I honestly believe Isaiah West is the second most talented back on this team just in terms of talent. I think if he wasn't a freshman, we'd be seeing him play more. But when it comes to the short yardage, I would like to see somebody else get a shot here, whether that be Isaiah or Bo. I honestly, and CJ talked about it after the game, I didn't get down low enough. I mean, he met that safety one-on-one in the hole again, second week in a row, and his pad level was way too high. Guy, 30 pounds lighter than him, got under his pads and stopped him dead in his tracks. And it's just like, buddy, you've been playing football. This is your 3rd year playing a lot of running back. This should be instinctual for you at this point. So I'd certainly like to see that. I want to talk about Brandon Inniss because he got so much grief the last couple of weeks. He's a guy that's just like, I love him for his attitude, for everything about him, for the way he carries himself, for the team first attitude, there's everything about him. And then we see him right off the rip, the first time we see him this game, have a great punt return. And I'm getting all excited. He's got both hands on the ball like this. And somehow the ultimate punt return curse at Ohio State, one arm gets ripped away. The other arm gets ripped away. The ball comes out. You lose the fumble. And I'm like, not him, man. Please, anybody but him. He made up for it, Tony. 3 receptions, 33 yards. I think he picked up 2 first downs. And I think he looked like we saw him at practice. I think we could see that extra juice. It looked different today, Saturday, than it did the past couple of games.
Have you had to tell people, like, I promised you, he looked quick and explosive at practice? I'm telling you.
I was yelling on the stream. There it is. That's what I saw.
and yet, they draw stuff up for him, and it starts to look like that. And they look for him, and it starts to look like that. And so it was good to see him tie his career high with 3 catches and perhaps lead to more. Now, these are all pretty much, directly to him. So, let's see what he does when he's the second progression or the 3rd read. And is he open? Can he do something with that? There's going to be more there, obviously. And I saw somebody in the chat mention that, one of the reasons Ohio State is playing so much 12 and 13 is because those tight ends are better than the receivers 3, 4, and 5. And there's some truth in that. Brandon Inniss has to be better than Max Clare. Will Kazmarik's always going to be on the field almost. So one of those guys, but they don't look for Max Clare much either, which you think they should start doing some of that. I think there's some room to be more effective with both 11 and 12 personnel, frankly, and in the passing game, which then I think leads to the running game being more effective. But yeah, good to see Brandon Inniss. Let's see what he can do, some downfield stuff, but we could say that for any of the guys. And then you just keep waiting for, and we saw Marlon Graham get a few snaps, saw Bryson Rogers get a couple of snaps. When is it going to be more than just cursory giving somebody a rest and giving somebody a break?
It felt like. Yeah, that's what it felt like. I saw a tweet from Bryson today that didn't sound great. It didn't sound great. Like people respect you most, or they don't something about you'll miss me when I'm gone. It's just kind of a thing. Like it was something like that. And I was like, I hope he's not getting upset. I love Bryson Rodgers.
Yeah. And the thing to keep in mind right now is that Ohio State has hit game number 4. So if anybody is looking to transfer, and I'm not saying he is, but this is the time of year where players start to like opt out and try to preserve a redshirt. Now, Bryson Rodgers has already used his redshirt, so that doesn't really apply to him, but it would apply to the guys who still have not burned theirs. But that's something you may start seeing around college football again this time of year, or is it the NIL? The NIL going to keep them around?
Right. But no, a little bit of a breakthrough, I think, for the Claire Innis combo in this game. And we saw some more action, and I think it's important that they do get a third involved in there in the rotation. So that was good. But let's go over to defense. Obviously, the stars of the show, Kaden. When Bo Atkinson, well, first Logan George, and then Bo Atkinson were signed in the portal periods. Full-grown men with experience, and I was looking at things thinking, all right, Kenyatta Jackson, as much as he played well during the playoffs and kind of leading up to the playoffs, he's kind of your clear number one at end. And now it looks like Kaden Curry and maybe some combination of him and Bo Atkinson be on the other side. And are they going to be good enough? Those two combined. Wow. I didn't expect this. I love Kaden Curry. I've always loved him as a player for his motor and for everything he brings to the table, but I never suspected he would be like, that's a count on him guy as a starter every game to produce. And this was just one of the more insane performances we've seen in the last 20 years from an Ohio State defender. When we look at that stat line of 11 tackles, 9 solo, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, I went through all the box scores last year looking at Jack and JT, and their best game, both of them, was coincidentally against Tennessee. You can add them both up, and they're barely reaching what Kaden Curry did on his own.
I do wonder what they could have done in this defense.
True.
I think that's something, because you're seeing Kaden Curry, and 100%. When I said go back and watch the game, watch him every single snap, because he does something new every single time. It's like, you go watch a band and they're playing new music and you're like, I love this song too. This is great. And there'd be times where, one snap he goes and sacks the quarterback. Then another one, he's like pointing out, hey, we got a wide receiver screen coming. And then he goes and tackles the wide receiver screen. There's one where he tackles Jonah Coleman 5 yards downfield as he's like essentially dropping back in his zone. And, oh, here comes Jonah Coleman in my zone. I guess I'll go tackle him. Getting after the quarterback, playing nose tackle and blowing up a screen and turning it into a sack because he was there so quickly. And you got to feel bad for Washington Center because he had a day at the office to forget. But Kaden Curry lined up in one of the 5-man ends in that in the penny look, playing defensive tackle on a 3-man line at just wherever he was. And there was one where he reached back as a running back was running. It was the inside give to Desmond Roebuck, and Roebuck starts to run by him. He just reaches out, leaps, and it's like it's the painting on the Sistine Chapel. He's outreached and he just brings the guy down for a 3-yard gain. Wherever he was a sure tackler. He's now leading the team in tackles.
It's bizarre.
And tied for the team lead, but by far has the most solo tackles. Go find the last time he had a defensive end doing that after 4 games. One of the top sackers in the country, one of the top tackles for loss guy in the country. And yes, a lot of that was because of this game, but it was not just because of this game. He's been very good all season long.
Oh, hell
not
yeah.
bad for a guy you're wondering, boy, I hope he's okay with Bo Atkinson and Logan George coming to take his job.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I was thinking. And I feel like such a bozo. On that one.
And the thing is, he's had better numbers every year than Kenyatta Jackson.
I know, but it's just you look at Kenyatta's frame and it's just like, man, that guy's the prototype. Not that guy, but here he comes, just nonstop, never gives up down the field. It's just like he's like the perfect player right now. And man, I'm enjoying it and hoping it continues. And obviously, Caden McDonald, maybe the most dominant one tech in all of college football right now. Certainly by the PFF numbers, he is number one. Tony's putting up numbers like Tyleek did at 3 tech. In fact, his game against Washington better than Tyleek's best game last year as well, just from a stat stuffer point of view. Kenyatta also had a sack. When we looked at these defenses, looking at 24 and then coming into this year, I thought, all right, the secondary I think might be a tick better. I think the linebackers might be a tick better. It's just a matter of how much worse or how much you're going to drop down on the defensive line, and that's going to kind of tell the tale of this defense. But the way Patricia's got them playing, we're not really seeing them have to rely on that too deep much. They only played 11 snaps. The starters outside of one role, and that is the time alone, Edric, whoever goes in that role, have all looked really, really good. And I don't think it's dropped. I don't think it's dropped at all. And I think that this defense overall, like now through 4 games, I was saying it at first with a little bit of, man, am I sure I'm not just being a prisoner of the moment? This is a better defense. It's a better, faster defense.
And it's different from snap to snap, which is part of the problem for the offense as well. And they're Will Smith in there as well. He's playing well, making
That's
plays.
My next question.
Yeah, but like the defensive line overall, I think has been very, very good, and it's been better than expected because it was a question mark. Now, I don't think all of those questions have been answered. It's a long season, as we know, but some of the answers that we've gotten have been very emphatic in the affirmative that things are going to be pretty good. With that, we assumed the defensive ends would be good. I don't think anybody assumed Kaden Curry was going to have a game that rivaled JT Tuimoloau against Penn State in terms of best individual all-time performances, tying the school record for 5 tackles for loss in a game, that sort of thing. But just the different fronts and the constant change, I think, is helping slow things down, slow the offense down for a tick, slow the quarterback down, which then, of course, speeds up the defense.
Yes. And we got to get in, of course, Eric Biddle said that Caden Conan the Destroyer was my sleeper pick on Juck on Bucks, and I've got to vouch for him. He said all off season, Juck, you're sleeping on Curry. He did. So kudos to our guy. Now that I've shouted him out 3 times on the pick, he could stop putting in the chat. That's 3 times, Biddle. All right. So Edric Houston loses the starting role before Grambling. Gets pulled twice in that game for penalties. And the way it happened, like immediately off the field, almost felt like there was something more to it to me. And then against Ohio, he had a really rough day. Couldn't get off a block, was getting blown off his spot on a double team. It was just a rough day for him. And obviously didn't earn that spot back. Then we see him go into the Washington game and, didn't do much, but get a penalty, which was pretty much an unacceptable penalty, in my opinion. In a spot like that, you just can't have it. You cannot have it. It was more egregious than Phil's was. Phil's maybe would have gotten away with that. It was in the mix of the guys. Edric was just kind of wide out in the open doing that. But you coming into this season, like my thought here was, all right, and I did some polls on this. Who do Buckeye fans kind of trust more to take that next step? The group inside with Edric and K-Mac, or Curry and Kenyatta? And pretty solidly, the winners there were K-Mac and Edric. I believed Edric was going to take this next step into being a pretty dominant 3 tech. I think most people did. And you pointed out not too long ago on the BuckeyeHuddle.com board, which everybody should subscribe to because it's the best chat there is, and lots of information that we don't talk about on here, the proprietary stuff. But on the BuckeyeHuddle.com board, you said, what is it that he did in his freshman year that would make you guys think that he was going to bust out and be some kind of dominant 3 tech this year? And I thought long and hard about it, and it was absolutely right. He didn't do anything his freshman year that would make me think that, other than the profile, the personality, the fact that he's really smart, that he's really strong, that he gained weight, and the way he interacted with everybody on the team. It just looks like everything lines up for him to take that next step. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. We've not seen it. I don't think we're going to see it this year. I'm not giving up on him as a player and potentially being a dominant player, But this, to me, when we look at the year, there have been a lot of really pleasant surprises. Maybe like 3-1 pleasant surprises versus this is not such a great development here. But this is not such a great development here because Ty Malone in his place, he's doing okay, a little better than he did. But to your point about Will Smith, who was a 3 tech, now moved to 1 tech, he's playing fantastic. The second best interior lineman right now, for sure. I don't think it's close. Do you think we could find a way to see him and K-Mac on the field together?
I honestly don't see why not, especially when Kaden Curry is getting some snaps at their, at nose tackle as well,
Right.
like in that 3-man front. I think that's doable. I feel like Edric Houston is going to eventually. I think this is the first part of the story that he's going to write this year, and I think the ending is going to be pretty good. But in terms of like everybody came into the season is like, well, yeah, he's a known quantity. I'm like, no, he's not. Like he's the 5-star defensive end that everybody wanted, but he's been a defensive tackle for less than a year now at this point still. And so what has been his big play? What has been the play where you're like, oh, there it is? Because it hasn't been near the ball. So there's still that needs to happen. But one of the reasons we're all intrigued, but like his teammates were saying, like his NFL draft teammates were saying, yeah, watch Edric. He's going to be the best. He's going to be this. He's going to be that. I think JT Tuimoloau may have said it at the combine. So it's like when players tell me that, or I hear them say that, that means something to me, and I put it in the back of my mind. But we still have to see it. They may see things differently in practice than what we're seeing in the games. The penalties got to go. There's going to be so little tolerance for that as the season goes on, because if you're going to do that against, now, like then you can't be trusted to not do it later. He's still going to have an opportunity to prove himself, and there's a long way to go. I think the only way he's going to get better is to play him, but Will Smith, man, I'm with you. Like there's a lot there. And, Jason Moore, I don't believe he was on the availability report. I'm not sure that he actually played. They may have held him out of this one just for precautionary purposes, but are they going to get anything out of him? Because that's another guy that is maybe an option, but I don't think anybody's counting on that. So the most known quantity at this point is Will Smith and Tywone Malone. And Tywone Malone, like you said, hasn't been bad. He's been involved in plays. We've seen that. I think we've seen him make more plays than Edric Houston has, for sure.
I agree, yeah.
So at some point, Edric Houston needs to be a playmaker and not just an occupier. And I remember asking Larry Johnson to, in preparation for this season, and I'm like, where is he in relation to Draymond Jones as a redshirt freshman? Because he made that move to defensive end as an injured true freshman, did not play. Redshirt freshman defensive tackle. He's incredible. And Larry's like, whoa. He's not there yet. Let's not, everybody has their own thing. We're not comparing him to Draymond Jones right now, even though they're the same age and Edric Houston has been healthy during his career at that point, and Draymond Jones hadn't. So there's still time. I think it's going to go get better. Frankly, I don't know that it could get worse.
Right. And that's true. And that really surprising. So when we look at the big picture here in the Big Ten, we see Oregon go into Penn State and beat them. It certainly looks like now they are a lock for the playoffs. I think they've only got USC and Indiana left on the schedule that could give them any kind of issues. Penn State, however, has to come in and play Ohio State. Then they play Indiana at home. And there is a chance here that Penn State could be hosting Indiana for a potential playoff on the line game there, which would be one of the more exciting games I could imagine, considering how they came into the season, the hype around them. I listened to James Franklin again, and he did the old same thing he does after every loss, gets in the press conference and reminds everybody about the 12 years of success he's had, what he's been able to accomplish, which is just like, I almost feel bad for this fan base. You're kind of prisoners. Like, yeah, it has been really, really, really good, but the chance of it being any better, we're right now this year, and it's starting to look like it feels like it's getting away. Aller doesn't look like he's taking the turn for the better. It just doesn't feel there to me.
Well, Aller threw 25 passes for like 135 yards, and he just looks scared. And in the biggest moments and the biggest games, he looks like he comes off the field apologetically, and that's no way. You talked about Julian Sayin looks like he's having a good time. How often does Drew Aller in a big game look like he's having a good time? Because I don't think it does not happen. And he may have looked like he was having a good time after that touchdown pass to get them, closer late, but he looks way more concerned than a starting quarterback should. And they went out and got him a bunch of receivers, and it's still the production isn't there. I don't care if you complete 75% of your passes if you're throwing 6 yards downfield and there's no yards after the catch. If you lose your tight end and now you have no ability to move the ball dynamically, you never had an ability to move the ball dynamically to begin with, because you're just a tight end offense. And with Ty Warren gone, they need more. And Aller's not the guy that can get them there. And the running game is suffering. And yeah, I've told this before, but walking out of the Penn State game last year, getting to the press conference, post-game press conference, as the fans were leaving, we're just kind of like, going out in the same way. And I'm shoulder to shoulder with an older Penn State fan. And I'm like, hey man, you guys are going to go to the playoffs. And he's like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It's not going to happen. It's not going to turn into anything that is memorable. It's just going to be pain. Like, you lost to Ohio State again. We lost to Ohio State again. And even if we make the playoffs, we still have no faith in getting it done. That being said, like, James Franklin is right. I mean, this is what Penn State, this is me saying, and this is what Penn State has always been. As like, Joe Paterno wants national championships, but the game is much different now than it was back then. So, can Penn State compete for a national championship? Sure. I mean, if Michigan can do it legitimately, if they can do it legitimately, if they did it legitimately, I think Penn State can do it, which is also why I think there's some frustration. You see Michigan do it, and you're like, there's no not much dynamic offense there. So, why can't Penn State have it? And it's always going to go back to the head coach.
For sure. Well, when we look at the rest of this Ohio State schedule, when we look at Oregon, it seems to me like right now the odds-on money is those two meeting in Indianapolis. And as far as Oregon, since they've been in the conference now, they've beaten Penn State twice, they've beaten Michigan, they've beaten Ohio State. Pretty damn impressive stuff. And should that matchup happen, there's the potential to meet in the playoffs if it doesn't. But should they meet again this year, I mean, we've got the real start of a budding, nasty kind of rivalry developing here. We fight nonstop on the recruiting trail. It's just that Dan Lanning's whole persona and how he was after that game, like, he's easy to hate or love, depending on what side you're on. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Again, back to the original point. I love the expansion of this conference. It's so much more exciting.
Well, with Penn State going off the schedule, Oregon's going to slide right in and be that rival for Ohio State, that second rival. And, when was the last time there was a 1 versus 2, if that happens in a Big Ten championship game? Has that ever? I doubt that's happened before.
Oh my gosh.
Because was there certainly no number 2 in the Big Ten West? I think that's safe, right. That's safe to say. So there's a lot of possibilities there. And again, it's more than just rankings. They are probably the 2 best teams in the nation this year. And what they did, we all know it's tough to win at Penn State. Just because you do it doesn't mean it's easy. It is very tough to do. And so credit to Oregon for doing that. It was not pretty, but you can't go in there expecting it to be pretty, and you don't care how it looks. Just get it done and move on.
Absolutely. All right, Tone, I appreciate you so much for joining me tonight on the Buckeye Huddle Primetime. It was a fantastic chat, and I will catch you tomorrow, buddy.
All right. See you tomorrow.
All right. Take care, bud. And that, our man, Tony Gerdeman, that was a fantastic chat. I did notice you guys had some questions here. I will pull up. Let me get here to my start. Sean Duffy, Juck, have you been to Madison? I'm thinking about going in 3 weeks. Now, I've been to Kenosha. Wisconsin. I've never been to Madison, but boy, man, you can probably get, well, I don't know, with the Buckeyes coming in. I was going to say, like, maybe it'll sell out, but man, they have such a negative energy surrounding the program, surrounding Luke Fickell right now. That'll really be an interesting one. I'm sure they'll sell out. Ohio State fans will sell it out if they don't. But it just looks like such a disaster up there at Wisconsin. And originally at the start of the year, I was a little nervous. I was a little nervous thinking like, all right, this game could potentially be tricky. Remember, Oregon went in there and had a really tricky game last year. It looked like Wisconsin might upset them. So that said, it's always said to be a ton of fun there. If you're into that kind of thing, fun, right? In Madison, definitely. No Longer the Man says, if OSU can score 24 points, they'll win the game. Our defense is so good. However, with that said, I'm still worried about Michigan. At this point, I don't know how you can not be worried about Michigan, because there's been so many, like, just logically times that you shouldn't have been worried about them, and you needed to be worried about them because they ended up winning the game. So I'm with you. My man Fisherman likes Minnesota's quarterback. They trust him more than Day trusts Sayin. Ouch. That's tough to hear, man. But honestly, I'm curious to see how this goes through the next couple of games. Through Minnesota, really Illinois, I think, is the one I'm most curious about. I think Minnesota, we're going to see things kind of open back up a little bit. But then Illinois, you go back on the road. Illinois obviously just beat USC, so they've bounced back from the Indiana loss. And when Ohio State goes in there to play them, I think they will be considering this a really tough game. Are they going to start the game like they did against Washington? Is it going to be a similar game plan with everything turtled up and we're going to rely on defense? I certainly hope not, because look, I'm just a believer you can do both. I'm a believer you can have a suffocating defense and also trust your offense to go out and just run your normal offense. But, you know, if it works, it works. My issue is, here's the thing. If you try to be conservative and play like that all year long, you're going to get in a game at some point where you need to score points. And now you're forced to turn a switch and all of a sudden it's just supposed to turn on. And I don't think that's how it works. Gabriel says, Juck, how well do you think Julian is getting through his reads? I think he's getting through them really well. I think he's a fast processor. I haven't seen the all 22 yet from the Washington game, but I'll definitely pay close attention to it when I get it. But man, he's just smart as a whip. And the kid's a dream, man. Really, he's a dream quarterback. Emily said, I heard Bo was injured part of his senior year, so maybe they're slow rolling him in. Well, not slow rolling him anymore. 17 carries. That's a heck of a. So what I wanted to see was Bo Jackson getting, you know, if they do a split in carries in a big game, a game that matters, a 60-40-ish kind of split for Bo. And he ended up getting 17 carries to 11 for Peoples and Donaldson combined. So that's even more than a 60-40 split. So he's taking a big old bulk. But he was injured. He had a knee injury. Wasn't the injury that it was the opposite knee that he had dinged up last week in practice. Fisherman, when will Day take special teams seriously? Now, he told us last year, entering the year, that they were taking it seriously, that they were doing different things. And I just saw Nate Ebner at the Woody last week. Nate Ebner's on the job, right? Like, I don't know, man. It just feels like a cursed operation, particularly punt return. I will say that they did snuff out that fake, right? That was pretty good. So we can hang our hats on that for the day that they were able to snuff that out. That could have been a disaster. Rod, who else saw the Tyreek Hill injury? I didn't see it. He's done? Oh, it was a bad one? Was it gruesome? Will Smith is definitely getting jiggy with it. No Longer the Man believes we have the best players and the best staff in the country. And I agree. Type 1 if you hate Dan Lanning more than James Franklin. So I don't know how many of you guys saw Dan Lanning's post-game interview on the field, but it was something. I might have it saved here to pull it up. I don't, but I do have a couple of still shots of just the faces he made in this 1 minute and 30-second interview. Like, I don't know how in 1 minute, like, you're being interviewed. How does that face come out when you're being in the middle of an interview? I don't understand it, but it was more than that one. I mean, it was just nonstop weirdness. Like, what is this? How do you make this face when you're responding to questions? And a lot of people were making a lot of accusations. I'm not making any of those accusations. I think he's a super, super intense guy. And it's still a little weird. But at the same time, if he was our coach, I'd love it. I'd love it so much. And the Oregon fans love it so much. On the other hand, our guy, James Franklin, look at him. Look at him just standing at the end of the game, looking around, nobody to talk to, no hands to shake. That's got to be the loneliest feeling in the world, that poor guy. Honestly, I'm starting to feel bad for him. Mike Ferguson says, Signetti coming for that L. I believe so. I believe so too, if you're talking about to Oregon. Penn State can definitely still beat Ohio State. Don't sleep on them. No doubt. I believe they can as well. Manfred was rooting for Georgia. Would laugh if Bama got knocked out of the playoffs again. Maybe we would steal more of their talent. Yeah, I always root for Georgia when the two of those are playing. I think I root for everybody against Bama, to be honest. So, but yeah, I definitely root for Georgia when those two are playing as well. So, all right, my friends, I do appreciate you so much for joining us on Monday's Buckeye Huddle Live. We will be back, of course, on Wednesday, and we'll have a lot of fun then. We'll talk about the games upcoming this week. Of course, we got the Minnesota and PJ Fleck. I hate PJ Fleck, so we'll cook on him a little bit. But thanks so much for joining me. Please do like the video and make sure you're subscribed to Buckeye Huddle, and check me out over at Juck on Bucks, where I do videos on the days that I'm not here on Buckeye Huddle. Also, you can check out the articles I'm writing over at buckeyehuddle.com, and they're usually free. So pop over on that website, put it on your board as a daily check. Tony's always got like 5 articles a day. I don't know how he does it. He just pumps them out. Obviously, you've seen Tony has a fantastic sense of humor. It comes through in the writing as well. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks to Tony for joining us. I will talk to you soon. Buckeye Huddle Primetime out.